Welcome to Save As Ability, a podcast to educate and inform you about disability employment issues. My name is David D'Arcangelo, and I'm your disability policy expert. Hey everybody, welcome back. It's David D'Arcangelo for another episode of Save As Ability. And we appreciate you. We'll be getting a great reaction if you can help us by subscribing, liking, comment, sharing. Sharing particularly really does help us grow and keep great content flowing for you. So today we're talking a little bit about to self-disclose or not self-disclose, to self-identify or not self-identify. What's the difference? We'll be talking a little bit about that, and we'll get right into it. So today, employees really face a little bit of a decision point. Employees with disabilities face that decision point of, do I disclose my disability? When do I do it? Do I do it during the hiring process? Do I do it once I'm, employed and in the system with the company? And, how does that work? And what's the difference between self-identification and disclosure and all that? So, organizations often underestimate the amount and number of employees that they have who are people with disabilities. Now, why is that? Because a lot of the times they're not measuring it one way or the other. And, so how are you going to know unless you're, it's on some form or HR is tracking it or something like that. And so then it comes to the employee of their decision point, because many disabilities are not apparent, right? So it's then up to the employee to disclose to a coworker, which is informal. Self-disclosure is, I told my coworker this, but I haven't formally done it. That's where you're now getting into self-identification. And there's a form, and now you're covered by the ADA and all this types of stuff, all right? So to me, that's like what I like to call the disability identity gap. And that is the data that we so often talk about here on Save As Ability, that we look at from whether it be the Bureau of Labor Statistics or, the American Community Survey, the BRFS, the SIP, all of those big like federal reports or even other reports that are done by private groups. That data is derived from people who are self-identifying, meaning they're like officially telling somebody or filling out a form and, like kind of declaring their disability. And so there are a very significant amount. We don't know the number. How could you know the number? But it's estimated to be a significant number increase that there would be of employees with disabilities who have not formally identified. So maybe they are a person with a disability, but for various reasons, they don't want their HR to know it. They don't want their fellow employees and coworkers to know it, right? So that to me is what's called the disability identity gap. And that's the difference between what employers track and then what is, compared to the actual number, I guess, of individual. Well, why does this matter? This matters for a couple different reasons. One, because us here at Save As Ability, we like to be a data-driven, right? So if it's not tracked, then it doesn't enter the data stream and we don't know about it. And so the number could be larger. It could be lower too, I guess, but theoretically, but more likely it would grow. It would increase the amount of individuals who have disabilities who are actually working, because we've seen this chasm, right? All right. But also it shapes how organizations and policymakers treat and impact the workforce with these larger policies, and whether it be a law or regulation or a private policy that any company is going to adopt, right? So what I've seen, both through my lived experience and as a policymaker and administrator and things like that, is that we really need to understand this better, because having better data is going to help create better laws, better regulations, better policies, and really ultimately will improve the situation for people with disabilities and our labor force as well. So if you estimate, and what I'm going by a Boston Consulting Group survey here that estimates approximately 25% of employees reported disability chronic condition, or impairment that affects their daily life activities. But that then doesn't reflect the official Bureau of Labor Statistics data that we have that says, the amount is significantly less than that. So there's, again, pointing that to that gap there. It's a very sizable gap that we think of individuals that are people with disabilities that are not identifying, therefore not making it into these larger data collection methods that the government is reporting on. So here's another data point. Companies report that only 4 to 7% of individuals are self-identifying. That's a very low amount in the national labor market. Here's another data point. 22.7% employment to population ratio for people with disabilities, and 65.5% of people without disabilities. So that's the comparison there. That goes to show you the gap. 22% of people with disabilities versus 65% of people without disabilities. So I think we have a pretty good understanding that a significant number or amount of those individuals might otherwise be counted if they were self-identifying. How much that is, we don't know. And again, we've pointed to these other reports. So there's a snapshot here that workforce representation is about 5% of employed workers formally identified as a person with a disability. Again, that's back to the Work Without Limits report. All right. So to me, that just shows that there's a gap that exists between this disclosure and this self-identification. Again, disclosure, you're telling your colleagues and maybe people know, but the self-identification is, I'm actually filling out a form. I'm actually asking for reasonable accommodation, like those types of things, like more formal, more structured. All right. And again, by the way, what we're using for this is we're using the ADA definition and the ADA standards. Why? Well, because the ADA Title I has protection for for workers with disabilities in Title I for employment. Okay. So if you're self-identifying as an individual with a disability, you now receive those protections from discrimination as a result of your disability. Okay. So another reason why it's so important if you can get the people to self-identify. All right. So closing the gap matters. Why? Because underreporting leads to underinvestment, less accommodations, less policy, less good programs put in place and fine-tuned and everything else. So really, we could be seeing progress and not even know it. We could be seeing gains. And actually, a couple episodes back where we talked about this new Gen Z and how they're seeing gains, one of the I follow this in various chat rooms and, people I talk to. One hypothesis is that that group is self-identifying more. Therefore, the rate and their employment and participation rates are going to be higher because of that. All right. So something to look into more. So what does this matter? Why does this matter? This matters because we have so many individuals with disabilities with talent that are out of the labor force, that we're trying to get into the labor force. That's step one. And then once you're in the labor force, then getting those individuals employed, not only for themselves, but for the companies who, want to make the better widget or provide better services. And then that raises the tide for society as well. So again, you've heard it a million times from me. It's a win-win-win when done well. Win for the person with a disability, win for the employer, win for society. All right. All right. So as we conclude here, really, what are we talking about? The call to action, I guess, is that we want to clarify this. And I think there's an opportunity here for the next version as there's been so much disruption in society since COVID. So as we come out of that and as we put new policies and procedures in place, there is a chance here to have employees and employers kind of get on the same page relative to self-identification so that we can start increasing the fidelity of these numbers and the data. All right. I think that's something that we can do, and ensuring that there's confidentiality, there's anonymity. These are all steps like I've proposed in the past. One of the ways we can do it is have public sector companies, the government and public sector companies, on your self-ID forms, don't even have the individual's name. Why? Because we want it to be totally anonymous. And if it's going to be totally anonymous, why do you even need their name? You don't. So that would be one way I think you could get individuals with disabilities to identify more, increase our data fidelity at the same time, you know what I mean? So you can get better data. So that's, I think, part of it. And then the other thing is, communicate it better. Right now with the Bureau of Labor Statistics, both people with and without disabilities, the manner with which that data is collected is being looked at, because it seems like every month they have to go back, they being the BLS, has to go back and revise the numbers. We really shouldn't have to do that. There should be a more modern way of getting this business intelligence out of these private sector companies to be able to report better. By the way, that's a larger economic thing that will help the whole economy. It'll help the markets, and it'll help, be able to plan and have a better idea of where we're going with employment and things like that. So, this is a big subject. It really is. It seems like it's an elementary subject, and that's why it's so important, because it's really the first step. Like, if you want to be able to get your reasonable accommodations, you need to self-identify to be able to access those, right? So it's kind of like the first link in the chain, I guess. But I hope this was helpful. Let us know if you want to hear more about this. And this is one of the things that Archangel Communications can help businesses do. So if you have questions or comments, see us. We can be there to build value for you. So it's David D'Arcangelo, another episode of Say Visibility, and I hope you have a great day. For more information about disability employment issues, please visit our website, disabilityemploymentsolutions.com. The Save As Ability podcast is available on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, our YouTube channel at Disability Policy Expert, or wherever you stream your podcasts. Subscribe, stream, rate, and review our shows. Your ratings and reviews help our show reach new audiences. Produced by Pod Pro Entertainment. Save As Ability lives within a network of podcasts located at podproentertainment.com. #TheNewRadio. Again, my name is David D'Arcangelo, and I'm your disability policy expert. Until next time, thank you. I hope you have a great day.